UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Tonight we focus on the protection of the sovereignty bill that is before Parliament. On the 15th of February, the 15th of this month, it was put before plenary. The first reading happened, but tomorrow and Friday, the second reading and the third reading are proposed to be happening on the floor of Parliament. But now it is at the committees, both the Legal Committee and the Defence Committee. What is really sovereign about this bill? Who is it protecting? Very many questions, very few answers. Tomorrow, we'll have many organizations or institutions going before the committee to explain where their stand is. The bankers have written, various sections in Lango have also gone ahead to express their concerns about this bill. But also, there's already Article 1. What's the difference between this and the sovereignty bill that is before Parliament? Let's get context with the guests that I have in studio. On my immediate left, Job Kija, who is a governance expert, is with us this evening. On his maiden appearance here with us. Good evening, Job, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, and happy to be here at UBC for the first time on the TV. I've been several times on the radio.
Thank you. The Honorable...
Yes.
The Honorable Sarah Pendi, the woman representative for Toro District, is with us this evening. Good evening, Honorable. It's good to have you.
Good evening to you and good evening, viewers. A pleasure being here.
The Honorable Nathan Nandala Mafabi, representing the people of Budandiri West, also a former presidential candidate, is with us this evening. Good evening, Honorable. It's good to have you.
You have forgotten the chairman of Jesu Cooperative Union.
But you didn't bring us coffee today.
Because you don't buy. Good evening, viewers, and happy to be here today after a long time.
Next is the Honorable Chairman Norbert Mao, Cabinet Minister in charge of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Member of Parliament-elect for Laro Peche, and also vying for the speakership for the 12th Parliament. Good evening, sir. It's good to have you.
Good evening, viewers. It's a pleasure returning here after a very long time.
That's very true. Lastly but not least, the Honorable Minister in charge of ICT and National Guidance, also representing the people of Kinkizi West in Kanungu.
I thought
Kanungu.
Kinkizi East. I told you the easiest way is to know that the wise men came from the East.
He's also with us this evening. Good evening, Honorable Minister, and it's good to have you.
Thank you very much, Timothy. Good evening, viewers. Good evening, fellow panelists. I am happy to be back here on Behind the Headlines.
This bill, for context, has raised a lot of concerns. But to just give you context, it has agents of foreigners and foreigners. It has funding in there. But also, the biggest part is regulation and registration. Those are the main areas that we'll be touching to look at. It is 5 parts, 30 clauses, and a lot said in there. But very many questions on what should be happening. Let me give you what will be happening tomorrow in the committee. In the committee tomorrow, it's expected that the Minister of Internal Affairs will be there. The Attorney General will also be there. But the presentations will be made by the Uganda Bankers Association, Uganda Human Rights Commission. The Honorable Yusuf Nsibambi will be there. Miss Sarah Birete will be there. The Forum for Women Democracy will also be there to make their presentations. The question is, we've seen bills pass in 3-6 days to become acts. Can this happen to this one? Especially the Parliament, the 11th Parliament, will be concluding business next week. Will it see the day of light, or will it move to the 12th Parliament? Let me start with the Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, there are 2 ministers here. So Dr. Bariomunsi, let me start with you. This bill, what are you trying to cure?
Okay, let me give you the context that builds up to what we are curing. Africa was colonized, in the case of Uganda, for about 68 years, close to 70 years. And with the exception of Ethiopia, the rest of Africa was colonized. There was a struggle for independence which resulted in pushing away the colonial masters, the Europeans. Of course, there are other parts of the world which were colonized. And then we regained independence. And I am deliberately using the word regained because we had independence before. We were occupied by these masters, then they went back. But when they went unwillingly. One leg went back to their countries, another leg remained here. So they still wanted to influence what happens in Africa. Even when you look at the political architecture in Africa, especially when you look at fragile states in Central and West Africa, you still see the colonial hand hovering over countries, at times sponsoring coup d'etats and disruption in those countries. If I can give you an example, I come from Kanungu, which borders DRC. If you are familiar with the story of DRC, DRC was colonized by Belgians, and it is estimated that the Belgian king killed up to 15 million Congolese, and many of them, their hands were cut. It was a cruel kind of administration. On June 30th, 1960, they regained independence as DRC. Interestingly, they make a program on Independence Day and they exclude the executive Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba, who, after being provoked, he gets a microphone by force and says, "The history and the future of Congo shall henceforth be written by the Congolese themselves." What do the Belgians working with the Americans do? They basically plan to have him killed. 6 months later, he's killed. Whom did they work with? Colonel Mobutu Sese Seko, who had been a PA to Lumumba, but Lumumba had made him the army chief of staff. And then they used him to kill him, who later on also chased the president, Joseph Kasavubu, and became a president, stayed there for long. And since that messy situation, Congo has never thrived. I am giving this that even when the colonial masters left, they never left. They still wanted to hang over us and direct the affairs in African countries. If you examine the politics today and the going zone in our countries, you still see that hand from foreigners wanting to trample over us and direct affairs and direct things happening in our countries. So what does this law, what is it about? You asked about Article 1 of the Constitution, which says power and authority belongs to the citizens, the people. And this power, and the people will exercise this sovereignty through their will and consent. In other words, the affairs of Uganda must be directed by Ugandans themselves. Now, to give effect to this provision of the Constitution, there is a need for domestic legislation. So this law, the Protection of Sovereignty Bill, basically answers to Article 1 of the Constitution. And if I can read for you the long title of the bill, because the bill usually has a short title and a long title. The long title reads, now the short title is the Protection of Sovereignty Bill, but the long title, which usually brings out the objects or the objectives of the bill, that this is an act to provide for the protection of the sovereignty of the people of Uganda. Sovereignty basically remains to that power that people should have to determine for themselves, for self-determination, to be dependent and to do what they want without foreign interference. That's basically what sovereignty is. So the first object is to provide for the protection of the sovereignty of the people of Uganda. Then to designate the department responsible for peace and security as the responsible entity for the registration and regulation of agents of foreigners. Because it is basically talk about foreigners or their agents influencing issues in Uganda against the interest of Ugandans. So a department is being created in the Ministry of Internal Affairs to handle that registration of foreigners and their agents, and also to provide for the protection of the sovereignty of Uganda. Then to provide for the registration of agents of foreigners. The bill introduces agents of foreigners or people who work on behalf of the foreigners, and the foreigners are also defined in this bill. Then also to regulate the funding and any other assistance to agents of foreigners and for related matters. So this is the long title of the bill. So in a nutshell, this bill is providing for regulation of foreigners trying to interfere with affairs, internal affairs of Uganda by way of disrupting governance, by way of funding activities which are against the interests of Ugandans and other related matters. So the question is, should the sovereignty of Ugandans be protected? In my view, the answer is yes.
You're still not answering what you're curing.
No, you're
because
not,
the
you're not
question is
understanding.
specific.
Yeah? Yes.
What are you curing with this bill? Because everything you've said,
Yes.
almost you say something, then you almost don't say it, because you're talking about Article 1, which says power belongs to the people who shall exercise their sovereignty in accordance with this constitution. Yes. Already this is covered. Why do we need a bill? You're talking about Congo,
Yes, but
Belgians.
You operationalize provisions of the constitution through municipal legislation.
So
this is now a law to operationalize that Article 1.
Why don't you strengthen the institutions that are already there? Why are you creating a whole law to be able to expound on something that is already covered? Because as executive, you have powers given to you by the public.
Yes.
So really, what are you curing?
So you can as well say we have a comprehensive constitution. Why don't we just work with the constitution without parliament enacting laws?
No, I'm actually saying,
Yes.
why don't we strengthen what we already have by enacting new laws?
What do you lose by enacting a law? Because strengthening institutions, yes, is good, but that may not bring out sufficient provisions. Like here we are saying, a foreigner may want to send funds to destabilize a country. And we're saying there must be specific provision in the law to regulate that. We're not saying don't send money, but if you send money beyond a certain threshold, then there should be some institution to say, look, this money is for what? And then it gets clearance.
Dr. Chris,
so
Bank of Uganda has a report that shows 60% of the remittances that come from outside come through mobile money. That's one. Two, it tells exactly where the money is coming from and where it is going. So why are you duplicating processes that are already in place by creating a new law?
There is a Chinese who said it doesn't matter whether the cat is white or black, provided it catches the mice. There is nothing you lose by supplementing existing laws to make the legislative framework stronger. Because much as Bank of Uganda, yes, there's a law which establishes Bank of Uganda, but it doesn't have sufficient provisions to close some of these gaps. Like the funding which may be offensive that comes through different channels, there are lacunae that are being cured through provision of these specific sections of the law, and it does no harm. What do Ugandans lose if we strengthen that regulatory function in that area?
Let me come to Chairman Mao. Chairman, when you look at this suggested bill, many corners, especially as far as even Lango, raising concerns about this, the bankers raising concerns about aspects within here. When you looked at this bill, what do you feel is the spirit behind it? What's the spirit behind it?
Let me first thank you and the UBC and all the media for giving all citizens an opportunity to debate the bill. The legislation has its origin. Cabinet has tabled this bill. It's a proposal. Now it is in the hands of Parliament. And I'm very pleased that uncharacteristically, the Parliament has opened up this bill to the public so that they hold what is called hearings.
Yes.
Now, people with opinions will go to Parliament and make an input. That in itself is an exercise of the sovereignty of the people. We recently had an election, which is the main exercise of sovereignty, actually. So in exercise of their sovereign powers, the people elected those who should manage the Ugandan state. That is an exercise of sovereignty of the people, the one you are talking about in Article 1. Now, when the Parliament debates and passes the bill, it will go to the President. The President will then assent to it.
Yes.
If he agrees with what Parliament has done, because by the time the bill goes to the President, it may not be in the current shape. It is presumed that it will be influenced by the opinions of those who are going before the committee. Now, when the bill becomes law, it can still be tested in the courts of law. You have seen cases where Parliament has passed laws, the President has assented to those laws, and then the courts simply throw out the laws and say no, they do not pass the test. So these debates are healthy. Let's start from there, that this is a very, very healthy debate. To those who are not lawyers and those who are concerned citizens about what they consider extremes of this law, let me put the central question at the heart of this bill. How and to what extent may a democratic society protect itself against the inappropriate and manipulative influence of foreign actors? Inappropriate and manipulative. Inappropriate means it is not acceptable. You see, in human relations, we have what they call indecent gestures. I can shake the Honorable Sarah Opendi's hand. That is appropriate. If I touch her breasts, that's inappropriate. Now, that is what the Ugandan state or any state would say. Well, there are things you should not touch. There are areas you should not touch. So the debate should be about whether in the bill we are protecting those areas, or we are even denying anybody waving to the Honorable Sarah Opendi and say, no, you can't wave to me. That's inappropriate. That is what the debate should be. And then manipulative means I go to the Honorable Sarah Opendi and I say, do you know that Honorable Nandala is a witch? And suddenly the Honorable Nandala realizes that the Honorable Sarah Opendi is no longer free with him. Even when he tries to extend his hand, she's moving away very fast because I have manipulated her through misinformation. Now, in the era of technology, it's the duty of a state to do that. That's why you hear that some countries don't allow TikTok, for instance. Some countries, in Dubai, you cannot make a WhatsApp call, whereas in Uganda you can. In some countries, no Facebook. So the goal of any law that seeks to protect the sovereignty of a society is to push back against manipulative and inappropriate actions of foreign actors. Now, the foreign actors can exert their influence through Ugandans, whether individual Ugandans or corporate entities, organizations, and so on. So the debate should rather be, if it is our intention to be a democratic society, then nothing in the Protection of Sovereignty Bill should offend democracy. After all, our Constitution is explicit. It says we must only do those things that are acceptable and demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. The critics of the bill are saying there are aspects of the bill that will make Uganda a society which is not free and not democratic. Now, that's a question of evidence and a question of argument. Fortunately, this is something which is being done in other parts of the world. There are countries that are subtle in protecting their sovereignty. Somehow, Uganda, we are a country that believes that what you see is what you should get. So while other countries don't have an anti-homosexuality law, but they arrest homosexuals, imprison them, and torture them quietly, for us, we go to our parliament and say, anti-homosexuality law, and everybody is all over us like a rash. There are those who protect their sovereignty by basically spying on you. They may not even have any tough law, but if you are doing anything in their country, you notice that there is a lot of state presence all over you. Unlike in Uganda, which many visitors say, our country is really, really free. Now, those who believe that certain provisions on this law will undermine, or certain provisions of this law offend our commitment to building a democratic and free society, have now got the opportunity to prove that. I'm glad that many actors are dealing with the various aspects. The banks are dealing with the aspects of the banks. And of course, you yourself, you have brought in the main issue of saying, well, do you need to create another state structure, especially since we are doing rationalization? We are on a weight loss program as a government. So if we are committed to a weight loss program, we can achieve the objectives without necessarily creating additional layers and layers. But we have to admit that these threats that the Honorable Chris Baryomunsi has said are real. These threats are real. Unfortunately, in the world today, debates are driven by fear. These are the kind of debates that informed discussions on vaccines. When vaccines came, everybody was saying, no, we don't need them. Even corona is fake news and so on and so forth. I want to insist that these threats are real, but as we defend ourselves against these threats, we should not undermine our commitment to building a free and democratic society and having an additional layer, especially in this age of information where computers and internet capabilities are weaponized to even undermine elections. In a way, it is like you asked Honorable Chris Baryomusi that you already have a wall fence. Why do you need burglar proof? Now, the Honorable Chris Baryomusi said, well, the wall fence is okay, but to sleep more comfortably, I think I need burglar proof also. Now, the burglar proofing should not be to such an extent that you basically burglar proof every aspect, so that even if you need to rush to the toilet, you take so many minutes to go through so many doors. Now, that is what the debate should be about. So, lastly, the Honorable Chris Baryomusi gave the context. Every state in Africa is grappling with two issues. Number one is what we call the national question. Uganda was not created by Ugandans. Actually, Uganda is not a sovereign concept. It is not the Bakiga and the Acholi and the Bagisu who drew the border. That in itself is the first evidence that our sovereignty has been under attack. Now, the national question means we must find a formula to live together harmoniously as Ugandans. So as we deal with the national question, we could face manipulation. For instance, you do remember that as we were making the 1962 Constitution, the Independence Constitution, the British decided to take sides. They exerted undue influence on the Kingdom of Buganda. They undermined the government that was led by Benedicto Kiwanuka. They manipulated the issues, for instance, of the so-called lost counties of Bunyoro, which led to disputes that eventually dismantled the very constitution we had built, because they decided to unduly influence people who were negotiating with other Ugandans. And then you ended up with districts like Acholi, Kigezi, Bugisu, territory of Busoga, kingdoms of Toro, Bunyoro, Buganda, and Ankole. Now, that manipulative influence has still got scars up to today. It has even affected land. They came here and imposed this Milo land through the 1900 agreement. Now, those are examples of manipulative influences. The second issue that African countries grapple with is decolonization. Now, to what extent is the Protection of Sovereignty Bill an act that supports our decolonization project? In other words, to say, if we are going to make mistakes, we must make them ourselves. We don't let somebody else make our mistakes for us. In fact, they are still all over us. When as a young member of parliament, we did go to Ministry of Finance, and we found a unit there called the deregulation unit, headed by a white man, permanently seated in the Ministry of Finance. He heads the whole unit, and his job is to ensure that foreigners are free to do as they wish in Uganda. So let us not debate this bill without tackling the fundamentals, how we deal with the national question and how we continue the decolonization project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me come to the Honorable Nandala Mafavi. You being an accountant, also looking at bankers also showing up tomorrow to be able to have a hearing of what their thoughts are. Most of the banks here being foreign influenced or foreign funded there. Is this a national independence question, or is this about to isolate our economy and our diplomatic means here as a country?
Thank you very much, Timothy. I also want to thank my colleagues whom have come to meet here again after a long time. Unfortunately, we are debating with people of this is an election. Mao is standing for speaker. He can't make a mistake in his debate, otherwise he will have a problem. Valiambusi, I call him Valiambusi because when he came to my place, they could not pronounce his name. But my brother Chris is also planning to become a minister. So all the debate they are going to do is to say in favor of the law, of the bill, because they fear that if they say the contrary, they will not be there. But if you are seeing how they are talking, you saw Mao went this way, he came out with nothing. You saw my great brother Chris, who is very great. You see also rotated Congo where he came to nothing. What are we looking about?
Executive, and we are members.
Exactly, you would have said it was produced by the executive, that is it, but if the population is raising issues, we are ready to listen. And that's what you have said, but you're bringing wrong examples. But let me start with the laws we have. First of all, we have anti-money laundering law. Very clear, it talks about money. We have the Political Organizations Act, which says that to fund a party, maximum is 400 what? Million. We have the Anti-Terrorism Act, which is very clear about terrorism, anything to do with terrorism. We have the Constitution, which talks about the people of Uganda. The NGO Act. Now, for me to see what they are saying, I think they are running mad. I told you people during the election, this is coming after election. Why? If you look at, let me start with the country itself. We make budgets every year. Are they implemented? Now that they are not being implemented, Ugandans are not asking a question. This budget which is ending this year, all the money was taken to an election. That's why you saw money in the villages running up and down. No roads done, yet they were in the budget. No schools done. So now they are worried that the population will raise against them. So what they are trying to do is to force the population to accept that the government is right. I don't know what they are fearing. Election ended. Why are you following people after election? This law is intended to fight people who are political actors, nothing else. And they are saying either NUP got money out, VP got money. By the way, when I want to talk about NUP, the political organization, Mao here, my brother, is the current chair of IPOD. They went and sat under the law. It says every election year, all political parties will be given money equally. Was it done? It wasn't. But there was a political party which had money, which was splashing everywhere now and then. Mao has never asked a question because he's the chairman of what? IPOD. He kept quiet. Now, people in these elections, they go, some people can vote without money. Of course, there are those who want money to vote. I will give an example, like those who voted the opposition leaders. There was PDM money, but they refused. But others feared, they were fearing PDM, they had to vote as they wanted. So, in my view, I said this country, after every election, when you see a new law coming, there's a problem. Of course, also longevity is very bad. President Museveni has been around. There are intelligence people in every village. They are called the VISOs, GISOs, PISOs, and whatever. Intelligence in the country is there. If anything took place, it will be known. No money can come in this country without the knowledge of Bank of Uganda. It comes through the what? The system. So they can hold the money whether there's right or wrong. You see, the people who are here against this country are Ugandans themselves who are here. I'll give an example. URA should be looking for taxes from everybody. Recently, there's a woman called Nyamero, is it Haja somewhere? She gave her son, who is 5 years, a vehicle for 250 million. Now, I went and asked URA, show us the tax return. Which I want to know now is to ask Mwezi, when he was searching him. And Kutesa, show us your tax return. He had a copy. He discovered Mwezi had no tax return. He said this man was a problem. He's here, he knows. That's why I'm saying the problem with the debate we're having, people are after something. Otherwise, these are right people who would have debated well this law. So, the woman has never paid taxes, but she has an income to spend over 250 million. That's a person where you would be investigating and say, where did you get the money? In fact, the president of Uganda would have acted already on that one, because there must be some money in the house. How did she get money of that magnitude? I have tried also to look around how she paid the car. I'm yet to get results. Now, so those aside some people of that nature. There are people who have, of course, you have had currently in Uganda. People say we don't have money, but the money in saturation is too much. The problem, because the money is in people's what? Houses. If the money, there's a lot of money out there, but very few people have it in the houses, in the pocket, in the handling it. The rest is hanging. So there's money, and which is they are not doing work, and because it's not doing work, it is causing us problems. Now, how do those people, they would love such a law to come in so that they are protected? So
and let's stick to what you've said. You've said it is weaponized for especially parties or political activists that are involved in this. But also, don't you see a need for government to do this, because foreign people have interests, and their interests come before. So if these funds are being given for their foreign interests, don't you think it is necessary to have a bill like this to be able to safeguard the country against their interests?
But you have the NGO bill, if we are talking of NGO. And you see, again, we're making a mistake. Is Uganda really having its own resources to run the economy? No. They go to they go to World Bank, IMF, there are so many people coming in with more money to bring here. There are also, if we are talking about this law, it should be also saying that Uganda government should not also go out there to look for it, for money. Two, we have also protocols which are, agreements which have been, you already know Maputo, it's called the Maputo Protocol Agreement. What is it called? The one of agriculture said that every government in Africa should have 10% of its budget.
15 for health.
For, no, 10, no, the percent, is it 10 or 15? For agriculture. Yeah, 15, that's what I was saying. 10 is for agriculture, 15 is for health. Are we doing it? So those are the things which we should be doing to handle that. So that means if we're not doing 10 agriculture, 15 health, then it means we're still behind. And we shall always depend on those foreigners for resources. That's why you see that our deficit is too high, our debt is in the sky. But now you are coming to bring a law to regulate even the small little money which is coming in from these KO people. People go to Dubai to work to remit money here, go to UK, they remit, and by the way, do you know how much the remittance is? It's about, I think, $1.2 to $1.5 billion. And if that money is stopped to come here, first of all, the economy will be in crisis, because that's the money which has been helping to curb the foreign exchange costs. You know, when money comes in, the cost of the money, our dollar is stronger. And if there's no money, our Uganda shilling is stronger. Okay. If there's no, let's just give it. But you see, you gave them more time. You see, the problem is, that's why I don't want to come to these things. For the two, they talked for 36 minutes. After talking for about 5 minutes, you want me to stop. Is that fair? I don't want to come to debate. Oh, you wanted me to meander also? No. So I'm not ready to meander. I am explaining to you that what we are doing in this law is we are also still depending on foreigners as a government. Now, the money, if you stop the money to come in of the KO people, because now everybody, now even your brother, sister in Dubai or where, is a foreigner. And you see, we're making a conflict, because even the laws here, they define who is a foreigner, who is a resident, who is a non-resident. Now, if this money doesn't come in, we are going to lose over, I think, 5 to 6 trillion shillings, which would have come in economy to buff us. And if you look at what it does, that one, it creates jobs. When that money comes in, it creates jobs. It comes for health sector, maybe some of the, whereby the government has failed to do, it goes in health sector, it goes in agriculture. And even when it comes in our village, for me, let me give an example. Somebody sent money to an old man, he got his money, 100,000, he goes and drinks beer. Now, the man who sells beer will get income. The one who produces the beer will also produce so that it creates jobs. So the moment you stay for this, we're in a problem. And that's why I'm asking government that the earlier you remove this bill, the better. Because you have other laws which can monitor money in this country. If you want money, if you don't know how to use it, do it. AI. I am happy Mao is talking about technology. You know AI? I hope everybody knows the AI.
Yes.
AI is doing a great job. Nowadays, AI can tell you what is happening every minute. You see, I have some people who are disturbing us on the land of BCU in Napanga there. I want to give a fracture example. This was land which was got in the 50s, and it came from this scheme. So you put in AI. The Bujisu Cooperative Union have land here. It will bring that it got this land like this, like this. And I was telling the court, why are you disturbing us? AI is telling us that this is the land where even our accounts are showing that that is our land. So if it can bring something of 1900, why can't you use it here to monitor Forex? Maybe you're telling us Bank of Uganda, the people you have there cannot do work. Or you're telling us the people in police cannot work. The URA cannot monitor. Unless you're telling us. So you cannot create organizations day in, day out. They are too expensive for nothing, and you're fearing for nothing. So me, I'm saying these are fears which can be dealt with, and the current laws can manage this. And if you are trying to say it is politics, then there's one alternative. Say there will be no elections in Uganda. Enjoy it until you die.
Thank you.
It can also work. If you are fearing people who are contesting every minute, then tell them that for us, this districts here are ours. These are not yours. This one we can allow. Also do it like you did in the last election. So me, Chris, I want to beg you. You're a very intelligent man. Go back to cabinet and say this is the law. Could be a problem. We have already laws. Now you're a lawyer. Do the same. Article 1 of our constitution is very clear. Well, what is it? Power belongs to the people. Now you want to withdraw it and it becomes a government. So the moment you see people bringing laws to regulate a country, that means they are failure. That is dictatorship. If you are saying you're a democrat, why do you bring such laws so that they help you to rule a country?
Thank you. Let me come to Honorable Sarah Pendi. There are too many, the conversation or the wording within this bill leaves a lot of room. A Ugandan residing abroad is a foreigner. So is the Ugandan there for 2 weeks, 1 week, 6 months, 1 year? There's also where it says an agent of a foreigner is a person who acts on the orders, request, control, or under the direction of the foreigner. Why is there so much ambiguity in this law, leaving room for whoever is trying to implement it to decide how it is working?
First, allow me to appreciate this bill. And the reason for appreciating this bill, despite those other details that you're raising, is because as we speak now as African legislators, we are working on an African charter on family, sovereignty, and values. And this African charter has arisen out of the past 3 conferences that we have been holding in this country, where, as you are very much aware, Africa was now the focus of most of these people who felt that they must come and bring their values, redefining the family values to the Africans. You remember the campaign that had even gotten into our schools. campaigns where teachers were now being used as agents to actually teach our children values that were not our values as Africans. And that, of course, culminated into the Anti-Homosexuality Act. So arising out of this conference, we felt it is high time as Africans that we came up with a charter to clearly define what a family unit is in the African context. Protect our values as African people, but also sovereignty. And when we talk about sovereignty, we are looking at, the health sovereignty. Countries must come up with their own solutions, funding for healthcare. Because you realize that much of the funding that was coming to the country had conditions. And of course, we had even to lose certain support because of, enacting a law to protect our Ugandan children. We are looking at education sovereignty. We are looking at food security and food sovereignty. At the end of the day, you are also aware that today, our indigenous seeds are slowly disappearing. And at some point, we shall find that we are dependent on somebody for seeds to plant. And that is dangerous for the African population. So for me, looking at the protection of sovereignty bill, although it does not wholly touch on our African charter, which we are actually working on now, but this is, to me, a step. And I've had so many people, of course, raising concerns, including what you have just raised now. I also looked at it. For example, a foreigner includes the Ugandan citizens residing outside Uganda. This can be improved, and that's why the bill is in Parliament. And when you go further, it says a foreigner includes any person, institution, or body that the minister may by statutory instrument declare to be a foreigner. This clause, the way it is very dangerous. Because I may be Honorable Mao's opponent, and he's the Minister for Internal Affairs. And he has authority if the bill is passed in this current form. He can declare me a foreigner. So, despite that, for me, I believe that Parliament will do its best to improve this bill. And also maybe ask, of course, receiving the various views from the various stakeholders, make amendments accordingly. It will just not be the way it is.
You mentioned education sovereignty, health sovereignty.
Yes.
But also the Honorable Nandala Mafabi spoke about agriculture 10%, health 15%. We are not adequately funding these social services. So how do we talk about sovereignty with these services that we cannot adequately service to ensure that all Ugandans are getting these services?
Yeah, but now once this bill is passed, then we have to get back to the drawing board to ensure that we have funding for these sectors. You are aware that Uganda as a country, we don't have a national health insurance scheme, for example. But that is one area that would help us fund our health sector. Because currently, as we speak, much as we talk about free healthcare services, the healthcare services in this country are not wholly free. Well, you may go and see a doctor, but you will end up buying the medicine. So there is some out-of-pocket expenditure from the Ugandans. And sometimes you are even told to provide the money within the health facility where you have gone, the government health facility. Bring the money, we shall buy the medicine. And they pick the same medicine. But when you have a health insurance scheme, you would be dealing away with all these things. And that has been my cry. when Parliament passed the health insurance scheme, actually, it was the 10th Parliament. Unfortunately, it was not assented to by the President. I was sad because, to me, I saw us moving backwards. But I hope that now, in the 12th Parliament, this is something that should be considered, so that you can't talk about sovereignty. And of course, when you look further, the bill talks about sovereignty in the social services sector as well. So if you're looking at sovereignty, you must look at your independence. Independence in, and authority in managing your own affairs. So we must find the money to provide healthcare services to our citizens, which I believe can be done. We must find money to also deal with the education sector, fund the education sector wholly, and stop dependence on the foreign agents or foreign donors that we are now actually trying to deal with under this bill. And I strongly believe that that can be done. If you look at the amount of money spent on corrupt, people swindling government resources, talking of 10 trillion shillings, how much would that do in the health sector? Quite a lot. 10 trillion shillings, part of it would go into funding, the education sector, so that we can have quality education services to our population. So we must deal with corruption, but we must now tighten our belts and find local funding to fund these sectors. Otherwise, you can't talk about sovereignty, protecting our sovereignty as a people, and then you are heavily dependent on foreign funding for these key sectors.
Thank you very much. Job, the Honorable Mao mentioned inappropriate, manipulative. The Honorable Nandala Mafabi mentioned, weaponizing this, especially for political actors or political parties. But he also mentioned different laws that are there to be able to safeguard these areas. Who are we creating this bill for? What is the intention behind it when you read it? But also, is the spirit behind it for Ugandans or for the safety of the government?
So, first of all, I think at this point I want to thank this government for introducing this bad bill, because for once we have seen the whole country, the whole citizenry mobilized and responding to a legislative process. This is the first time that you see all Ugandans across the board, from Karamoja to Lango, to Acholi, to Ankole, to Bunyoro, to Toro, in the diaspora, everywhere, across all different sectors, the medical, the teachers, cultural, bankers. It's actually the first time that you really have unison in terms of engaging on a parliamentary process. And I think this bill has really helped Ugandans realize that there's need for a functional parliament, and now they're engaging with this process. But out of this response that we are seeing from the citizenry, there's one unanimous message. If you've been following on the social media, if you've been following on the other media platforms, Ugandans have actually rejected this bill. Actually, what we are seeing from across the board, Ugandans are saying, don't touch this thing, because this thing is so bad, it is evil, the spirit behind it is really... in fact, the first time when I read this bill, when it was leaked, I kept hoping that when the final bill is tabled in Parliament, the text will actually be different from what we are seeing. But for those of us that did the analysis then, we actually, when you look at it, there's just a bit of changes in terms of the numbering of the clauses, but the text is exactly the same. And at first when I saw it, I wondered whether the person that actually drafted this bill has ever stepped in law school. Because first of all, it is very poorly drafted. Number two, about 50% of this bill is unconstitutional. It contravenes the Constitution. Majority of the things they are trying to bring in here, like Honorable Nandala has elucidated, are already dealt with in other laws. So this is really more like what you'd be calling overregulation, but also multiple regulation. So when you look at the spirit behind this bill, I kept wondering, but really, first of all, did the person who wrote this bill, are they Ugandan? Do they hate Ugandans so much that they can put in this bill clauses that are clearly anti-Ugandan? That you can put a clause that designates a Ugandan because of going to another country as a foreigner, and the people they are relating with back home as foreign agents. It's really, and I think that is the one thing that has spurred the entire country against this bill. When you listen to the ministers, just like you've listened to Honorable Barrio Musi and even Honorable Mao, these are very intelligent people. So when I looked at this bill for the first time, and I realized that it had gone through cabinet, it had been cleared by the caucus, the Attorney General is owning it, the minister is owning it. So I wondered really, how can a bill that looks like this go through all this clearance and it comes even before Parliament and it is still looking like this? You need to make the work of Parliament easier, because this bill actually, if you know, the other time we were talking to members of Parliament, a few of them that had actually cleared this bill in caucus. And before we even looked at it, they said, you know, if you were to save anything in this bill, what is it that you would save? And we told them, okay, let us go clause by clause. And at the end of this bill, you tell us what to save. And we went from clause 1 to clause 30, because there are 30 clauses. And at the end of the day, one of the MPs said actually we were played, because we were never given the opportunity to discuss this thing in caucus. We didn't know that this is what it means. And in that regard, we would actually throw away the entire thing because it is too bad. Okay? So if you look at cabinet, executive, I think it also needs to be making the work of Parliament easier, because now Parliament has to go into the whole process of rewriting this bill. In fact, if I had the authority, I would be saying Parliament just throw it out. And I think this is what Ugandans across the board are actually saying. The ministers are talking about countries where this law is, and I've heard some of them actually say it. Which countries do they talk about? They're talking about USA, Canada, UK, because we are a Commonwealth country. They talk about Australia. On the contrary, when you look at this bill and you compare it to those laws of those countries they are talking about, this is the total opposite of the laws in those countries, because the laws there actually empower their citizens. They are protecting citizen sovereignty. What does this bill do? It actually subjugates citizen sovereignty. It takes away the sovereignty from the citizenry and hands it over to a few individuals within the executive. Now, when you do a mapping of other laws that are similar to this law, you'll actually realize that there's one common denominator among them. These are all countries that you would describe as autocracies. Which countries are they? And it's very interesting that these ministers, when they are talking about the countries which I think they want to make us believe that they benchmarked, they don't talk about these bad countries which have a law that looks like this. Which countries are those? Russia, Nicaragua, Georgia, Hungary. Hungary, if you look at the EU, it has actually been isolated because of having this bad law. The only country that has this law, in nature of this bill, on the African continent is Zimbabwe. And you know what's happening in Zimbabwe. If you look at, there are about 10 countries which have a law like this: Azerbaijan, North Korea, all these are autocracies. These are dictatorships. What has happened in these countries? The relationship between citizens and the state or the government in these countries is one of servant-master relationship. It is not where a citizen is really valued as a citizen, where power indeed belongs to that citizen. Number two, in majority of these contexts, these countries, as soon as this law was passed, independent civil society was closed. In fact, in one of the countries, I think it is Nicaragua, over 1,000 NGOs were closed at passing of this law. Independent media was decimated. The state seized property of civil society, research institutions, universities, etc. People have left and they have gone into exile. Those are the contexts we are looking at that have laws similar to this. Now, even with all those bad things happening in those countries, if you get Uganda's law, the proposed law, and you juxtapose it against these other countries that have those bad laws, Uganda's law is actually the worst of all those bad countries that I have talked about.
What makes it the worst?
It is the worst because it is the only law that proposes stripping the citizen of their citizenship just because of going and staying in another country. Because according to this law, a foreigner is defined as a Ugandan staying outside Uganda. It doesn't even say whether you've stayed there for 30 years or for 1 hour or 2 hours. Effectively, by this law as is at the moment, if I just boarded a plane right now and went to Kenya, I would actually automatically become a foreigner. That is what this law is saying. It is the only law like that. It gives the minister, like Honorable Saro Pendi stated, the power to determine who is a foreigner at any one time. That if Honorable Mao becomes the Minister of Internal Affairs and then I come off not looking so good to him, he can actually declare me a foreigner. It has a number of very poorly drafted clauses. It has clause 3 to 4, which talk about the administration. It sets up an administrative department, the Department for Peace and Security.
Under the Ministry
of Internal Affairs. It doesn't describe the composition of that department or even the qualifications of individuals. I mean, Honorable Mao, who is a lawyer, knows legislative drafting. He will actually tell you that is poor legislative drafting. Clause 14, registration. An agent of a foreigner must register with the Minister of Internal Affairs. Okay? Now, in order for that agent to be registered, they will look at 3 considerations. Number 1 is your health status. Now, it doesn't define what they are looking for in terms of health. Do they want to know whether you are HIV positive? Do you have Ebola? Do you have cholera? What exactly are they saying? Number 2 is your mental capacity. Okay? And how do you determine somebody's mental capacity? Number 3 is character. Okay? So the minister will look at me and say, for you, you're a person of good character, I am going to register you. But the minister can also say, for you, you're a person of bad character, I can't register you. Now, on top of that, you are supposed to apply for permits every 2 years, which permit can be revoked at any one time. What does that mean? That incumbent on the conditions that I gave, if today Minister Mao, who is the Minister of Internal Affairs, gives me a permit to act as an agent of a foreigner, after 3 months, I can maybe meet him somewhere, even on social media, and I abuse him. And then he can say, Job, you're now a person of bad character. I am revoking your permit. Okay. That's what this bill provides. This bill, let me say just one final thing. This bill is not about NGOs like it has been crafted. Okay? Because the lie that was told actually to a number of these people that cleared it in caucus is that this is an NGO funding bill. And you can see they've smuggled in so many things. But if you read this bill, it touches kadamas that are doing this clerical work in the Middle East. It is touching the medical professionals. It is touching bankers. It is touching telecoms. It is touching, if I am considering that as someone who has gone into the Middle East to work as a labor, as a whatever. I call it slave trade, I'm sorry. But this is a policy, a government policy, labor export, okay? The government through the Ministry of Gender has signed an MOU with a number of these countries to provide labor. Now, after sending these people there, through labor export, they are then declared foreigners. If that kadama is to send back money to her mother for medical care, the mother must first of all register as a foreign agent to receive that kind of care and must get a permit every 2 years to get that kind of care. So this law really is just touching everywhere. It is a wide net that has been cast in that if you're to throw it in an ocean, it is going to catch a shark, it will catch mukene, it will catch Nile perch, it will catch, it will bring these snails. It is not clear what actually this law is trying to cure. That's why you see it is so all over the place, going into anti-money laundering, it is going into the work that is supposed to be done by the Uganda Communications Commission, it is going into the work that should be done by the NGO Bureau, it is going into the work that should be done by the security. It is creating so many administrative layers, regulatory layers which are unnecessary.
Okay.
I think really what needs to be done, if I had the authority, is to get this thing and throw it away and tell the people that are bringing it, you go to these different laws that you are trying to bring into this law and strengthen them such that they are able to deal with the issues that you want to deal with.
Thank you. Let me read some feedback that has come through here. Good evening, Timothy. Thank you for the show. My question goes to the Honorable Chris. He talked about external funding for dubious or terrorism activities. What does the Financial Intelligence Authority do? It's already covered. Secondly, there have been cases of such circumstances, and the courts of law have been able to provide enough law to charge culprits like that. This is Sam from Gayaza. Thank you, Sam. Someone else goes on and says, good evening, Timothy. Thank you for the show. This is a critical discussion, especially for us in the diaspora. The diaspora and the economic role. As a citizen, I commend the initiative to safeguard Uganda's sovereignty in an increasing complex global environment. Given that the diaspora brings in 2.5 billion annually and the professional engagements are centered to Uganda's economy, how will the bill clearly ring-fence bona fide diaspora activities such as remittances, investment, technical advisory for the different areas and classify them as foreign influence? Economic balance and policy is needed. I commend the protection here, but we need to balance it. The operarization of this is distinguished between foreign interference and legitimate economic cooperation, such as foreign direct investment. This needs to be sorted. Okay. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be breaking down some few issues in there that need clarity on this bill.
When you don't use Momo, you get insulted by strangers. Save yourself from insults. Use the Momo app or dial *165*3# to pay and enjoy zero charges below 5K. That's the power of Momo.
It's back, bigger, and with more business opportunities. It's the Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo Poate 2026, Uganda's flagship tourism event. Poate 2026 will take place from the 21st to the 23rd of May 2026 at the Speak Resort Convention Center, Munyonyo, under the theme Wanderlust. It's your time to thrive. Yes, it's your time to tap into Uganda's renewed optimism and tourism growth. Tourism stakeholders, travel trade partners, and tourism enthusiasts will be part of the Poate 2026. Come and network with like-minded people and unlock new business opportunities. To participate, register at www.poate.co.ug. Poate 2026 is brought to you by Uganda Tourism Board and partners.
The government's core mandate is to maintain law and order, safeguard citizens' rights, and provide essential public services.
Remember, one of the pillars of a roadmap is innovation and entrepreneurship.
There has been this question of how are you protecting our indigenous seed?
It's going to be a tall project that answers somebody's question.
For the past 20 weeks, the front bench has brought you insightful discussions on governance, security, healthcare, justice, and commerce.
When you go through this complicated procedure, involve the lawyers, you bring the case against him, the judge will hear you out and pass judgment, and you're out of court in record time.
We remain committed to keeping you informed and engaged on key national matters.
So these are huge, these are powerful organizations which now Uganda chairs. Why don't you come together?
If we haven't migrated to the e-card because of various reasons, including that not all the people of Uganda have smartphones.
You can sit in your house, apply for a passport. If you have a Ugandan who has a successful logistics firm in the US, it means he can come to Uganda and do a lot more.
Now airing every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with me, Jethro Kasaiji. your interface with the government only on your public broadcaster. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Welcome back from the quick break there. My name is Timothy Nyangwe. So in the studio, I'm joined by Job, Honorable Sarah Pendi, Honorable Nandala Mafabi, Chairman Norbert Mao. I'm also joined by the Honorable Dr. Chris Baryomusi. We're discussing the sovereignty bill, especially the details in there when you look at the part that talks about protecting the sovereignty of Ugandans, and also spreads all over to leave a few areas that are questionable there. And that's where our conversation is. How can we improve it? Because the spirit could be right, but the letter is having a problem. How do we improve that to safeguard Ugandans moving forward? You can be part of the show. Go to our YouTube channel, drop your comment there. All the number 0709 60 25 92 for text or WhatsApp. Let's get into this conversation. Honorable Chris, this bill, as it stipulates, there's a lot of work for the Minister of Internal Affairs. What competencies are required? Because if, forgive us for naming the Honorable Chairman Mao as the Minister of Internal Affairs, but what competencies are required for someone who can be able to judge character, judge health, and all the requirements that are in here?
No, the bill provides for establishment of a department. And within the government framework, we know what a department is. It has a head, commonly there's a commissioner, and then the other technical staff. And of course, government departments work with other departments in the entire government. For instance, are you saying currently we can't measure the character of an individual? Haven't you heard of the police department where you get a certificate of good standing and so forth? Are you saying we can't assess mental health of a person? We have mental health experts. So when you have a department of government, it works in consultation and partnership with other departments of government. That doesn't mean that the mental health expert has to be deployed in the department. So the department will be manned. And I am surprised. The lawyer there once said as if we should put in the law that the department will have a cleaner, will have a driver for vehicles. Once you make a department in the law, then the rest is administrative, how you feel it. There will be an administrative structure for that department that has technical staff to do this work. But the comments I wanted to make is that the first question we should put to Ugandans is there a need to protect the sovereignty of Ugandans? I would want to see how Ugandans answer that, including the people who are opposed. Is there a need to protect the sovereignty of Ugandans against undue foreign interference, especially foreigners who want to influence affairs in Uganda against the interests of Ugandans? My answer would be in the affirmative, yes.
Doctor, let me ask a question.
Yes.
What specific foreign influence or external influence are you looking at? But also, how can you prove to us that you can stop it?
The bill has many provisions. Funding actually is only one element, because you are arguing, Honorable Nandara and my other friend, they are arguing as if the bill is only about funding. Funding is only one part. There's the issue of influencing policy in Uganda. Like what Honorable Sarah Pendi was saying, our culture and ethos detest homosexuality. But somebody in Europe, in America, because for them they cherish homosexuality, want to influence the policy here in Uganda by introducing homosexuality, and we're saying no. We're saying no. The bill talks about the foreign policy of Uganda and punishes, for instance, somebody who wants to promote the foreign policy of another country, especially if it does not align with our own policies. So you need to read the law. I think some of our colleagues have just gotten biased without taking time to objectively look at the law. And like we have said, this is a bill. A bill means a proposal. This is a proposed law. And it is okay, like Honorable Mao said earlier on, for Ugandans to debate. My colleague, my friend there is surprised that Ugandans are debating. For us, we are happy as government that this bill has caught fire in the country, because the bill is a proposal, and the way we do work in Parliament, that when we introduce a bill in Parliament, it's read the first time and sent to a committee, and anybody who is affected or who is interested in the bill is free to bring proposals to amend or even repeal the whole law if you want. So these debates are healthy. And it is not enough to just come here and criticize and speak as if we who sit in the cabinet are daft, as if we don't have capacity to write a good law for Ugandans. We have gone to school. What we expect from Ugandans is to objectively look at this law, and if you think there is a provision which is offensive or which does not promote the interests of Ugandans, propose an amendment. Go and appear in the committee or write a memorandum and send it through your MP or send it to committee for Parliament to look at it, and then we amend it. But we strongly object that the bill, the way it is drafted, has nothing useful for Ugandans. No. And it's not about the fund. We are not saying that we are stopping funds from outside. No. We are only saying government will put on spectacles to look at the funds which are coming. We're not saying we are stopping. You are arguing as if how we have been mobilizing funds from World Bank, European Union, the African Development Bank, that will cease. That's not true. Or that if you are Ugandan or any other foreigner and you are outside, you can't send money. You will still send. But we are saying government will be critically looking at this money coming, and if it is above a particular threshold, we'll ask you, what is this money for? But if it is for a good objective, there should be no problem. What the bill is trying to look at is somebody sending money, and that money is to promote something which is against the interest of Ugandans. And the state exists to protect its citizens. Probably those who are fearing are those who have been trying to get obscene money, maybe from foreigners. So we are not stopping any money from flowing, but we are saying government will put on Garubindi to just see the money as it comes. So that if the money is for wrong reasons, then you explain to the minister, why are you bringing the wrong money for wrong? But if money is coming to promote health care, nobody will stop it, nobody will touch it. So please, stop misleading Ugandans. And by you saying, all Ugandans have rejected it, are we Congolese? We are here talking about this bit. So when did you do a referendum to say that the Bachiga have refused it or the Karmajong? Yes, there is this debate, especially you, the elitist, just trying to mislead the public. But maybe the weakness on our side as government is that we have not come out to explain to Ugandans. So we are going to explain, and we have also advised the Speaker to give time for all those who are interested, affected, and have issues to interact with the Parliament so that you can improve this bill. But we insist the bill is good and it is brought in good faith and intended to protect Ugandans against the ill intentions. It's not true that the Kadamas, the Ugandans in the diaspora, will be stopped from sending money. No. But the law is saying if you are sending huge sums, at some point maybe you'd be required to register and so forth. But if the money is for good intentions, you are building a house in the village, nobody will stop you from building a house. So, Mr. Royer, you stop confusing the public. Just read. If you are saying a provision is bad, read it to Ugandans, not just generalize.
I'll get to you.
Not just generalize.
Dr. Chris.
So, at the last day,
yes, the
issue of saying there are other laws, yes, there are other laws, but they do not address some of the elements that are in this law. And
like which element? Like which element?
Oh, what me to read. And there is nothing wrong, like I said earlier on.
Dr. Chris, you're protecting the funds coming into the country.
Yes.
But there are many multinationals that are here. How do you protect capital flight?
Capital flight. There are other laws that look at that.
And
so this one is mainly focusing on money coming in, but there are other laws which provide for externalizing the money which is made in the country.
Let's
Have
look
you
at
heard of people being stopped from sending huge sums of money outside?
What is government's definition of economic sabotage? Because economic sabotage is in this bill, talked about. What is your description of economic sabotage as government?
It is draft. It is written there. You can read. Yes. Let me read it for you. What is put? A person who publishes information or participates in an act or activity that weakens or damages the economic system or viability of the country, or causes economic disruption, insecurity, or instability, commits an offense of economic sabotage. So somebody who knowingly pushes an agenda or an intervention or an act that clearly undermines the economic progress of the country is what would constitute as economic sabotage. Sabotage, yes. That is plain English.
So you are in agreement with this law. You have nothing that you can change. Do you see elements of this law that need to be amended? Of this bill, sorry.
This is our law as a cabinet.
Do you see any need for some areas to have clarity for the public?
Hold on. This law is a government bill. A government bill means it has been initiated by a specific ministry, in this case, the Minister of Internal Affairs, and has tabled it in the cabinet. We have given submissions. For instance, I moved that we should include digital sovereignty, but I was persuaded that the other laws like the Data Protection and Privacy Act and the UCC Act provide adequately for that. So we have made an input at cabinet level, and some of us also who belong to the NRM caucus, we have discussed it there, and now we have brought it to Parliament and the public. And we are saying, yes, we have made an input as the government. You, Ugandans, also make your input into it. So, unless you are saying I amend it for you here, we shall amend it as we absorb what the public is giving us.
You wanted to say something before I get to the Honorable Chairman Mao.
So let me just explain to Honorable Chris Bariomunsi what that clause means. A person who publishes information or participates in any act or activity that weakens or damages the economic system or viability of the country, causing economic disruption, insecurity or instability, commits an offense of economic sabotage and is liable on conviction to, if it is a legal entity, 4 billion shillings. If it is an individual, 2 billion shillings, or you can be jailed for 20 years. What does that mean? That you, Timothy, as a journalist, if you publish an article, okay, for instance, making some projections about the economy, that actually the economy in the next 5 years could collapse, or even about security, and you say the war in the activities in DRC, or Uganda's participation in the activities in DRC, causing insecurity to this country, the government could perceive that as economic sabotage, and they could jail you as an individual for 20 years, fine you 2 billion shillings, or if it is an entity, like a research firm, they fine you 4 billion shillings. That's what this really means.
Let me come to Honorable Nandala. You had a comment before I get to Honorable Mao.
Yes, I am happy that, again, Bariomus is reading the law upside down. If you see, he talked about Section 24, which I've also opened here. Section 24, I know they call it clause.
Clause, yeah.
It is about remittance from those like World Bank and whatever. They're saying remittance for them from World Bank, from those matters for any to a public institution is no problem. But when you go ahead to say that you are yourself, you are on your own, why would you go out there also to seek money? Now, if you go ahead to read Section 20, clause 2025, I don't know if you have read it. They're saying you will not pay to anybody money, the bank, any institution, if you have read it, without the minister clearing it. You have seen it says, a supervised institution shall not pay out any money to an agent of a foreigner without the agent of a foreigner declaring the source of funds, submitting proof of the written authorization of the minister. So when your mother gets money, must go to the minister and submit what it means, then it cleared, then you get the money. So you can see the villagers must walk.
So where have I read?
No, I'm just coming up. First of all, the first one you read, I thought Section 24 would not be there, because now we will be saying the country has enough resources, we are not going out there. And if we have enough, yes.
Your own creation.
No, no, well, that's what he's
saying.
Let me finish. Me, I'm quiet, I was quiet. Chris, Honorable
You're
Chris.
not understanding the law.
Now,
You
then I
have
say,
put in Ruma Sawa.
I will speak in Ruma Sawa. Since you will come there and will give you a God. Now, again, it says, the institution, now clause 26, it must submit a return every month, and you has got the money every month, you must submit a return. So your mother must write a return to Minister of Internal Affairs about the resources they have got every month, or else you will follow him up. Again, that is another one. You have seen it under submission of returns. So these are, if you are saying it is not about money, the whole thing is rotating around what? Money. Even a policy to be done, it involves money. Mobilization, you need money and whatever. But you must don't lie people that it's not about money. Now, mental health.
No, I said it's money among others.
It's the big thing. Mental health. There's a law which says that all of us are mad. But the level of madness is the one which, the degree is the one which is different. So what we are saying, these medical experts,
not such a law.
They can even come and Mao can say, you are mad, you are not supposed to get this. And I'm worried. Why are we exporting people to go and do work?
There are authorities which can comment on your mental health status.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying.
It's not everybody.
No. By the way, you're forgetting, the Minister of Internal Affairs has a lot of powers. I hope they don't make you the minister. You might even tell me that Nandala, you're mad. And you will not know.
Thank you.
But let me make this small.
Yes.
No, you can. Now, this export of labor, how does it come? It comes because there are no jobs here. If there were jobs here, nobody would go out. Now it means everybody, whether you're working in UN, whether you're an ambassador, whenever you meet money here, you must state and apply again. This is a battle, and I can tell you, if you lose the $2.5 billion which come in, if we want to take about 18% as tax on it, because they consume, they will buy cement and whatever, you are going to lose over 2 trillion shillings in the form of tax, and yet you don't have money. Now, I am happy you have talked about Azerbaijan. Now, I'm happy I was with Mao in Azerbaijan one time when we were on this parliamentary network on World Bank. You remember when we walked around? What did they say? Here you don't speak now. All the NGOs here don't talk. You remember when we went to the other man in Paris and whatever? You get everybody has been cowed in. No NGO, everybody is totally in a prison. I went back for COP 28, the what? COP 29. The issue of climate change. I thought things have changed. That was last year. My God, no, last year but one. The situation there is that everybody is fearing his or our own what? Shadow. So why do you want to make Uganda fear shadow? Already we are poor, we are trying to move, we know that the government is doing what it can do, but it has failed. So why do you want to bring a lot to our people in Uganda? I would beg that we have enough laws. Now, we have talked about, somebody talked about Financial Intelligence Authority. Do you know about it? It deals with what? Money. Why do you want, if you are talking about monitoring money?
I think I'm a local villager, not to know the law when I'm an MP.
Yes.
Okay.
So why don't you empower those and monitor every shilling which is coming in and have it cleared? You have the Anti-Terrorism Act. If people are doing the Terrorism Act, just apply that law on terrorism. Because terrorism also has issues of money funding terrorism activities. I am worried. And
Honorable Mao, let me bring you in. How do we find a balance between national security, national interests versus freedom of expression, especially with this bill?
For our viewers, I think we should state that there is a supreme law in Uganda, and it is called the Constitution. When government brings a law, it's comparable to drawing a line freehand. Now, when you bring a ruler, then you determine how straight the line is. To me, that is the kind of debate we should be having. The arguments based on bashing people's opinions, we have got to moderate this law based on the Constitution. And of course, we have got extremists in this country. I've spoken about it before. Now, those who are saying this is just a law aimed at repressing dissenting and alternative voices, I think those are also extremists. And those who are saying we should not tolerate anything which is not Ugandan, we should not, we should, if you comment on the economy, then you are guilty of economic sabotage. Those also are missing the point, because we have a constitution which provides for due process. Every citizen in Uganda is entitled to a fair trial. Otherwise, how would a person who slaughtered school children in broad daylight be asking for Minute Maid? I saw the court being told that, excuse me, the suspect wants Minute Maid. Tomorrow he will ask for KFC.
Provide, because you are taking
so if we want to debate responsibly, and I want my friend Kija to know that my job is to shed light on this law, and then you see it properly. This debate is about shedding light. You see with your own eyes, and sometimes it depends on where you are sitting. If you are like Kija, who has been most of his life in civil society and sees the government as a threat to freedom of the civil society, you would understand where he's coming from. This bill is going to be debated clause by clause, and I wish Kija would be one of those who would go to the committee to give those views. I hope when you go to the committee, your goal is to persuade the parliamentarians to change their views so that you achieve your objective. Your objective is to, right now, your objective is to say this law is not necessary, it shouldn't even see the light of day. I think that is an extreme view, because countries need to protect their sovereignty. But apart from laws, now speaking philosophically, sovereignty is really about power. Not really the laws you pass. I wish those who are debating this are talking about this. Eventually, our best sovereignty will lie in our unity as the African people. You have heard the endless stories of the president, among which are the time they were barred from going to intervene in Libya as Africans, because foreigners gathered under the umbrella of NATO said, you can't land in Libya, an African country. Why? Because NATO says so. So sovereignty is also about power ultimately. You may assert your sovereignty verbally and say you are sovereign, like Kabaka Mwanga and Kabalega asserted their sovereignty and ended up in Seychelles in prison. Venezuela asserted its sovereignty and their president was picked overnight and taken. Now, the case of Venezuela alerts every country to the danger of infiltration, because obviously you cannot abduct a president unless someone was colluding with this foreign power. There are those who criticize this law as a result of paranoia. But these are legitimate fears. Remember, in the beginning I said we are dealing with inappropriate and manipulative foreign influences. We hope that the parliament will create a balanced law. The strongest arguments must be based on the Constitution of Uganda, which actually protects freedoms and rights and declares that Uganda should be a democratic society. Let us have a healthy debate about this law. And if you can prove that consolidating our efforts aimed at defending our unity is not necessary, and that these scattered laws that are everywhere are adequate, then it is your duty to go and defend it in the parliament. As Norbert Mao, I know that our biggest problems are not our citizens, really. And I think it is wrong for anybody to think that this law is aimed at Ugandan citizens. It's aimed at Ugandan citizens who are weaponized, just like a cancer cell. I will leave this to Dr. Bariomunsi to explain later, that a cancer cell is a human cell which has been corrupted. So it becomes an enemy to your body. It is not a foreign cell, but it is now acting in the interest of a foreign force, and it leads to your death. I do believe that to say that 45 million Ugandans are the victims of this law, and then you say that because of this law no money will ever come to Uganda. The majority of Ugandans are actually very law-abiding. The vast majority of Ugandans. We demonstrated that during the lockdown. We were very obedient. We are not as stubborn as anybody would think. So if there are tendencies in this law, or there are aspects which appear to promote authoritarianism, for instance, too much executive discretion, then you attack that one. Because to concentrate power on the hand of one person, we have dealt with situations where we had a minister of internal affairs who would move with forms for preventive detention. If somebody who is his friend identifies you as somebody who needs to be detained, he will not even know you. He may even ask you, what's your name? Then he fills the form and takes you off. Now, those are the extremes we are talking about. This discussion should not be about those extremes. An abuse of something is not an argument against its proper use. So if there are laws that have been made by other countries and they have been abused, for instance, I know in Hungary they passed a sovereignty law that was really bashed by the European Union. It was promoted by the leader who recently lost elections, Viktor Orban. In fact, that is something that should be a case study, that you must protect your sovereignty. Even Finland has a similar law, and it is one of the examples of the democracies that our people admire. The United States is dealing with its issues of sovereignty in a different way. You can see the actions of its immigration authorities, deporting people, building a wall, and so on and so forth. And their debates are going on. Now, Ugandans need first and foremost to trust the process through which an appropriate law will be passed. And there will be fire spitting on both sides. But I want to insist that the problems that we are grappling with are beyond some of the things you are talking about, the kadamas and so on. We are trying to settle the national question, how to unify our people, and number two, how to deal with the vestiges of colonialism. But you cannot do that if you are weak. Ultimately, sovereignty is about strength. You are actually not capable of being sovereign if you are weak. You can even put a signpost outside your land and say no entrance. But if a bulldozer comes, surely that signpost is not going to protect you. And that is the debate we should be having as Africans, building our collective strength.
And that's where I want to come to you, because the first time you hinted on the national question, you have still emphasized the same question there. As a country, and I think that's where we need to come, because the contestation of this bill is really considering where is our sovereignty. What would unite this country to answer that national question, but also what would the interests be for us to have the sovereignty we all desire?
I think we must go back to the days when the national resistance movement was not afraid to engage in public discourse boldly and to defend its views. And in a situation where our universities now don't even allow, students to debate freely, and I think we must go back to those days. Remember in 1986 when the NRM came, we had strong ideologues. We would, intellectually speaking, cross swords with the likes of General Kahindo Tafire and others, the Amanya Mushega. We were at the university with Chris Bariomunsi, and we debated that. Remember, when somebody is losing an argument, they will start labeling you. Even as we were labeled that we are being manipulated by politicians in town, that anti-government forces. But do I need to be manipulated as somebody from a peasant background to realize that the state has a responsibility to offer university education if it wants skilled people in future, or else it will have to import foreigners? So the labeling is what people like Kija should be attacking, that deal with my argument. If I'm saying it is wrong to detain people beyond 48 hours in a police cell, you don't say somebody in Washington is the one who is telling you to do that. And also the global nature of the world today. We have treaties as a country. That is also going to be a subject of debate in Parliament, where Uganda has international commitments that allows some of those things. I really would urge the NRM to go back to the basics and get into, there's a kind of intellectual laziness that has infected the NRM. Those days, there were very serious debates, and the question was, do we go multi-party or do we maintain the movement system? Okay. And the debates went on and on and on. And when somebody feels that their arguments are weak, then they would say, you are agents of imperialism. they then
you are foreign agents.
They then label you, or they will attack your tribe and say You Bagisu, you are like that. That means I am basically exhausted my arguments and now I must attack your tribe. Or they say, you know, you Catholics.
Thank you, Honorable.
So it is the duty of intelligent people to unmask those kind of things. So those who are criticizing this law will lose a lot of points by spending a lot of time insulting the government and so on. Instead, they should say, look, I am here, I am a Ugandan, this is my national ID, and even you, if you arrest me, you have still to take me to court. Now, to talk as if the Minister of Internal Affairs will come and grab you and take you straight to Luzira, that is really very manipulative of the ordinary Ugandans.
Thank you. Honorable Nandala Mafar, we talked about economic sabotage and really were asking for an explanation. What will be the cost to this economy if this law goes the way it is, especially in terms of our economy?
I've explained. First of all, foreign direct investments which come here, the money which our people in the diaspora bring here, they bring, I think, $2.5 billion per year. If we multiply that, that's about 10 trillion. Now, if you just take for simplicity that they are going to pay 18%, I'm assuming they are going to consume goods, 18% as VAT, maybe another Forex excise duty of maybe say about 30%. Now 30% of 10 trillion is 3 trillion. So why it's 3 trillion? Why would you raise 3 trillion to URA because of a law wanting to block politics? Now that's already, it's also going to create unemployment. Already we have unemployment, but the moment there's no money here coming in, more jobs are going to be lost, and even more unemployment is going to come as part of it. And when unemployment comes in, again, the issue of sovereignty which you are talking about will become worse. If a person is hungry, it's more dangerous than if he has eaten food. In fact, you should be happy that in Uganda we don't have food inflation. If we had food inflation by this business of how you are running the country, people would have already fought. But we have food to eat, and that's why people are not fighting. So what's the cost to economy? Economy will go down already, which is already heavily indebted, and now that means to fund this country budget, you will have to borrow more money, and as you borrow more money, you are in more danger. Investments will go down. As investments go down, it means jobs go down. And I can tell you, it was also going to be a very big burden, a cost to everybody, because you are talking of return. My mother, if he gets money from somewhere, must file a return. And somebody say, to avoid this, you leave your things and go in. So I can tell you, it's a big cost. I don't think my brother Chris is aware, because he's saying it's not money. Or it's not only money, it is money. Everything is hinging on what? Money. And what money you're talking about? That the money which funds politics in this country. Already we have the Political Organization Act, which says the maximum you can get is 400 what? Million. So why are you, again, you're also talking about the 400 million in the what? The same what? Same bill. Yet it's already there, covered. We have the financial intelligence, which is working on the anti-money laundering law, which already covers money which is coming in, which is not documented, which cannot be accounted for. We have Bank of Uganda, which says all the money which comes in. Now, if that doesn't come in, our money will depreciate. Let me explain how our money depreciates. We are an import country. Our imports are more than our exports. Now, this money which comes in from the diaspora, this foreign money, is the one which is bridging the gap of Forex. So the demand for Forex to go and buy these ties we're putting on, these suits we're putting on, will be too high. That means a lot of money chasing little dollars, little pounds. So the cost of a suit, a shirt, or even the Muvumba you're talking about will go high because it comes here by putting Forex in it. Anything which you see coming from China, you must change money from Uganda currency, get dollars to import it. So if there are little dollars here, that means Uganda shilling will depreciate. Instead of being 3,750, it will be 5,000. Who will suffer? That low person within those villages.
Honorable, before I come to Honorable Pendi, especially banks and various institutions are going to present. And banks have raised concerns, and I just want us to pick on two. One is source of funding. A bank has to recapitalize when Bank of Uganda says your levels have gone down. And they're talking about the 400 million there. They also talk about that they already know their customers and where the sources of funding are coming from. They also raise another concern about registration. They say as banks, they have to now get a different certificate from the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Will these different institutions be listened to, and can they have impact on how this bill changes?
First of all, how many local banks do we have?
2.
Which one and which one?
The Centenary and the Pride.
Exactly. And I think Post Bank.
And Post Bank, yeah.
No.
But Post Bank was bought, I think.
By Power. I think it was bought by Power. I don't know Power. I think but someone was telling us. Now, if that is the case,
Just change the name.
They say where they have explained that's a change. They have just said that they have changed names. Of where?
No, please continue.
No, but that's what it's saying. That means all these banks are foreign banks. So they have their companies somewhere, there's master companies, like Abusa has its headquarters somewhere, and to bring money here by going maybe to some other place to bring money to trade in around here. So how will you manage banks if you are saying they're right to complain? If they don't bring in money here, they will be undercapitalized and there will be a problem. By the way, currently, even if you're in the bank, if a Ugandan went to bank money, that's why I'm saying there's regulation. You went to bank money, say 20 million shilling on your account, and your account has never had even 100,000. The bank will first freeze that money to ask you, where is the source of what? That money. Before they do anything. So already the banks are working. Even by the way, the banks every month have to use returns of where to Bank of Uganda and the Financial Intelligence Authority. So the system is already working. Haven't you heard about people saying, excuse me, my money came in, it is stuck in the bank. The bank says, if you don't explain this money, it is going back. And it goes what? It goes back. You see, if it is a security concern, by the way, all these banks are monitored by the security. There is security in Bank of Uganda. There is security in these commercial banks. There is nothing they can't do. So I am not so certain why we should go for a law which is going to cripple our economy. Already the economy is crippled, by the way. It is we're just living on God's mercy. Let me give one reason why the economy you're not seeing. Last year we made a budget. Okay, this year which is ending. I want you to look at the budget. Did we implement everything as we put in the budget? And we're bringing? No. In fact, out of the 100% of the budget, we did only 30%. That means 70% was not. Now somebody say, the economy has not been affected.
What about whose assessment?
By the way, I'm giving you numbers. But you go and look at what you planned for.
As you conclude,
just cook figures.
I don't cook figures. By the way, I come. If you had wanted, I would come with. If we're going to, I would have come with figures here. And you know it. How many schools did you plan to build? How many have you built? Just talk there. How many roads kilometers did you plan to do? How many have you done? So I can tell you these are things you know it, but you want to pretend.
What the authorities?
They've sorted the budget. I wanted the budget to be audited, and you will see what I'm saying. So what I'm trying to say, that if this thing comes up, it is going to come. The Water General Report is going to come. It will say you got the money, but this is what happened. That's why even the deficit increased. Are you aware? Or you're not aware? Why did it increase? You had to borrow to fund activities. That's why you are going to have a problem. So what I'm trying to explain is that I know what I'm talking about. If you talked about metal people checking them, I can't argue with you because you know. But if it comes to numbers of that type, well, you must give me an opportunity to explain to you.
Thank you.
So what I'm trying to say, the economy will suffer if this law passes. But what I want to tell you Ugandans, this law is not for us. It is for protecting a few individuals. Why did you learn that our sovereignty was in danger when you have been in power for 40 years?
Thank you.
When?
Honorable Sarah Pendi, I know you have a comment, but a bill is supposed to be processed within 45 days. Will the 11th Parliament have enough time to be able to put this bill through with all these things ongoing?
Well, before I get to that question, allow me just to state that no government bill is processed without having a regulatory impact assessment report. So I strongly believe that there must be a regulatory impact assessment that will show actually the implications, both positive and negative
implication certificate.
Yes, on this arising out of this bill. So I think it would be interesting for us to get a copy of that report. If a true regulatory impact was done, then it should actually raise those concerns that Honorable Mafabi has actually talked about, issues around unemployment and of course even our currency depreciating. Of course, getting to your question, certainly the time is not adequate enough. Already from the list, you mentioned so many entities that are supposed to appear before the committee tomorrow. And I think by next week, if Parliament is supposed to be, winding up business, then of course the time is rather short. But if the committee works overtime, they can actually pick the views of all those concerned people. And I want to call upon Ugandans, really speaking on Twitter, speaking on social media, commenting about this bill. I've seen people on TikTok, will not help. I want to appeal to everybody. A call has been put out by the clerk to Parliament. Please make your submissions and find your way, appear before the committee and give your concerns. And of course, as I did indicate in the beginning, this bill certainly has some provisions which even I, from my own side, I have seen there must be some amendments. It won't come in this state that it is in. The duty to legislate is vested in the Parliament of Uganda. And certainly in legislation, you, as much as possible, must consult widely, pick views from different stakeholders, and at the end of the day, the committee compiles and brings those recommendations to the House. If the House is well constituted, with both sides, we just don't take the committee reports. We have to also internalize the committee reports and either agree with them or disagree with them and come up with other, amendments. So I just want to encourage those Ugandans out there speaking against this bill. If you feel that the provisions in this bill are already covered in another bill, appear before the committee and explain why you are saying so. Otherwise, merely talking is not going to help us. And of course, lastly, as I conclude, I see you want to rush away. I think the bill vests a lot of power in the minister, which is, to me, a little dangerous. This is one area that needs to be unpacked so that the minister does not have these absolute powers. He's actually almost involved in day-to-day operations, which is actually not good. Because, this is just registration. Why should somebody who is denied a certificate, go to court? There should be, the minister should be, the person that you appeal to. And that's how we've been writing our laws, that maybe the technical people, you find somebody responsible for issuing these registration certificates. And if that person does not do so, then you appeal to the minister. But also, the timelines are not set here. With Uganda's form of doing business, where people, and corruption is now the order of the day, if we don't set timelines within which somebody should actually apply and get their certificate or registration done, then you'll wait forever. Because the timelines, I have tried to look at some of the provisions. The timelines are not indicated there. And that's one area that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, you will move for 1 year. And this civil servant, for as long as you don't put something under the table, he may not be able to register you.
Interesting.
So that's one thing that I can say. But I don't know whether I'll have chance again. For me, I want to, if I don't have a chance again to speak, allow me just to say that we must break the chains of colonialism as Africans. This, we have political independence, the economic independence is still lacking, and these must be broken.
Thank you. Job, lastly, clause 13, publishing information or participating in any act that weakens and damages the economic system or viability of a country. The banks raise this as a concern, and they also say, you know what, they do publish the GDP, economic growth, but also there are other organizations that really project what taxes should look like, propose tax amendments and things like that. What happens to those entities that seem to complement government in that area?
So actually, what this bill says, much as for you, you're going to clause 13, there's clause 22, which prohibits these entities from engaging in policy-related matters. And it prohibits them from generating finances to engage on, to influence government policy without getting authorization from government. So for a civil society organization, a research organization, etc., that has been doing, for instance, as we do what we call trends analysis and scenario. You do trends, you map out trends, and you say, okay, over the past 10 years, what has been happening to the economy or security or whatever, and you project. You say maybe in the next 10 years, this is what we see as likely to happen. What this bill does is it basically takes that away from you. In order for you to do that, you must go back to government and get permission. If you don't do that, you commit an offense of economic sabotage as per clause 13, and you can be jailed for 20 years or fined 2 billion shillings as an individual or 4 billion shillings for an institution. So basically what that does is that it takes that, first of all, freedom of thought away from you, but it also cripples all these entities that have been benefiting from this kind of analysis. I look at entities like CS Bank, that, or even EPRC at Makerere, that has been doing amazing work, Uganda Debt Network, etc., that have been doing projections on debt, etc. So these must first get additional permission on top of having to get a permit from the NGO Bureau, having to be registered with the incorporated at the URSB, and all these other regulatory frameworks, PDPO, etc., that exist. Now you must get special permission from the minister to be able to have that freedom of thought and freedom of speech and expression. So basically what this bill does really is that it cripples that. But I wanted to say something briefly about the impact of the economy, and I saw Honorable Nandala has done a good job in terms of elucidating that. If you look at the definition of a foreigner, multinationals are foreigners, okay? If you look at the definition of a foreign agent, a staff of a multinational is a foreign agent. And what does that mean? That so staff of Stanbic Bank, of ABSA, of housing finance, which even New Vision, by the way, because there are some foreigners that actually have shares in New Vision, are foreign agents. They must register with the minister. So all those you people there that are working with MTN, Airtel, Stanbic Bank, ABSA, if this law passes next week, of which it is likely to pass, you must go and register with the minister and get a permit every 2 years. What does that mean? What that means in practice is that banks can no longer give contracts of 5 years because you don't have a permit you only have a permit of 2 years. After those, because if the bank continues to employ you, when your permit has expired, the bank commits an offense and they will be fined 4 billion shillings for every individual. So that is one. Number two, in economies, in countries where they have had such laws, like I told you earlier, one of the things that these countries have faced is international isolation. They've been isolated by countries that are democratic, but even international financing institutions like World Bank and IMF have actually isolated them. And I see Uganda with this law actually legislating itself into international isolation. What does that mean? That donors and even foreign direct investors are actually going to take off from the country. And what that means for the economy is that basically you have less revenue. But also assuming we just went to NGOs, the closure of DGF, the departure of USAID has significantly impacted this economy. If you go to NASA and in Nkrumah, where there's a lot of printing work that was going on there, these people will actually tell you how much impacted they are. You go to hotels, all these hotels here, Hotel Africana and the likes, all these were benefiting from workshops that were being organized by NGOs.
Yeah, but what were they printing?
If you look
Because
at,
just a minute. What were they printing? Because you know that it's government's responsibility to actually come up with a curriculum, for example, for schools. Now, government has books recommended, but then you find certain NGOs who are also printing books which were not cleared by government.
I don't know what Honorable Pendi is saying.
No. I am just saying that. Yes, what
I
were they
don't understand
printing?
actually what you're saying.
So
but the
you
point,
were
let me
talking
make my
about
point.
printing that
Job, let
Let me just make my point.
Before you make your point, let me
Yes.
put some clarity to what she's inquiring. She's inquiring if there has been foreign interests that has gone ahead to print material that needs clearance from government, especially differing from the values of the country.
So
do you think that is...
There are processes of regulating that. Okay, I mean the NGO Act, for instance, is very elaborate on how to deal with NGOs that are printing things that can be considered as offensive. And that is one regulatory framework. Because NGOs actually do file annual returns, okay, to the NGO Bureau. And the NGO Bureau knows what these NGOs are doing. So if there's an NGO that is printing material that is offensive, there's a way of curbing that. But what has been happening? You know it so well that entities like CS-BAG, Uganda Date Network, the National NGO Forum, etc., Honorable Mao, we work together on the campaign for free and fair elections. And there's a lot of printing which we are using on the national dialogue, which you committed to actually take forward. There's a lot of printing which was ongoing to sensitize citizens on different things. The Electoral Commission was working with NGOs to undertake voter education, civic education, the Human Rights Commission. That is the printing work which was going on at NASA and in Nkrumah. What Honorable Pendi is talking about, I don't know. If she knows anything that we were printing which was offensive, she can actually come here and tell us. But the point I'm making is that with the departure of DGF and the dismantling of USAID, so many businesses in this country lost business. Hotels lost. If you go to hotels now, they are not occupied. If you look at them, they'll actually tell you over the past 5 or so years, they have lost a lot of revenue. Look at people in the transport sector. Look at radios, the media, TVs that were having advertising being done and all this civic education and voter education that was going on these platforms. They have all lost business. Look, you're in the media industry. You can actually talk to the media, in the private especially, because UBC, you're lucky, probably you're getting subsidized by government. But if you look at these privates, even New Vision, it has actually not been breaking even. They were all benefiting from the business which was being provided by these NGOs. NGOs were providing jobs. In about 2 decades back...
Let me ask a question, Job. You mentioned all these entities.
Yes.
Whose interests were they representing? Because I feel government is also pushing... Whose interests were they peddling? So government is trying to get to a place where it says, let's safeguard both you and the generations that are coming after from interests that could influence both the way we live and our values. Do you think there is something in here that is safeguarding the next generation?
So let me make this clear, that the reason actually NGOs exist the world over is to fill up inefficiencies, the gaps that are left because of the inefficiency of government. Specifically in Uganda, so many NGOs are intervening in health, in education, in even providing legal aid. If you go to prisons, they'll actually tell you of how much NGOs are doing in terms of training prisoners, in terms of self-representation, because they are not able to represent themselves in court, they don't have lawyers. So NGOs are chipping in and they are providing this training, and people are able to actually self-represent. So NGOs are filling up gaps that are left because of the inefficiency of government that is occasioned by corruption, but also because of poor budgeting. As we speak, this year's national budget, government is projecting to raise 24 trillion shillings from aid, from donors. But what is it doing? It is bringing such a law that is actually going to chase away donors. What has been happening over the past years? Over the past years, government has been doing these projections and being able to raise only 3 trillion shillings. Now imagine 3 trillion is something like maybe almost like 10% of the projection. It is failing to raise revenue. And what does that? What does it do? It now comes back into local borrowing. When it comes into local borrowing through treasury bonds and bills,
as you conclude,
it is making it difficult for the local business to actually, because then government becomes the preferred borrower, and they are no longer lending to the local businesses. It is suffocating the local business. There's no longer enough money to provide for local businesses to grow, because banks are now preferring to lend to government. That is the crisis we are faced with. Government has been taxing NGOs, pay as you earn. Like I said earlier, if I may make this as the last point, 2 decades back, Johns Hopkins University did a study in Uganda, and it found that NGOs were employing 450,000 people in this country. Right now, it could be in excess of 1 million. As we speak, public service employs only 350,000 people. NGOs are employing more people than government can employ. Now, what is government doing? It is muzzling NGOs, chasing away aid, which has been helping to fill up the gaps that it is not able to fill up, chasing away tax, because all these NGOs are paying tax, pay as you earn, which is now at 40%, as per the proposals of this year.
So let me ask, you say muzzling, could it be streamlining?
I mean, what do you mean by streamlined?
Because the interests that are presented by these NGOs are based on who is funding you. If government is trying to streamline...
That's actually not true. Because you see, for any donor, if you look at the EU, you look at US, you look at whoever, when they come here, when they bring money here, they bring money, part of it is earmarked for government, part of it is earmarked for civil society. The question is, why is it that when government is receiving that money, it is the interests of government? When that money is going to civil society, it is now the interest of foreigners. So government needs to stop being double standards.
Okay. Allow me read some feedback so that I can give you parting shots. Thank you, Timothy, for the show. There are many Ugandans who work as consultants in good faith for organizations, agencies, even high-worth individuals around the world, and they get paid with international rates, advisory services. At home, they pay a lot of taxes. It's called a gig economy. I see such Ugandans as the ones who are being netted in this, working from home, now have to shift to other countries, okay? Honorable Mao is speaking everything that we need to hear right now. The question is, if he's to lead the 12th Parliament and this bill comes there, what will he be doing with it, okay?
Mao?
Speaker, that's chairs, Parliament.
Honorable Mao.
That's just chairs.
He'll be the speaker. He's coming.
Greetings, Timothy. Greetings, Timothy, to all the panelists. Thank you for the young researcher who has elaborated not lightly on the things said. The bill needs to be withdrawn. The young man, I have a son outside now, is an agent. My son outside the country is an agent. This is madness. The Honorable Chris Baryomunsi has declared that they will stay in power. He hasn't said that. But the president also is now a foreign agent.
If Uganda is voting me,
wow,
we will stay there.
Lastly, good evening, Timothy. It's great to hear the different submissions there. Unfortunately, it's interesting to listen to seasoned legislators there, making submissions inconclusively without knowledge in these areas. Celebrated panelists there. There are many legal lacunas that are left with this bill. Subsequently, the law in the Pearl of Africa. Frankly speaking, the law is good because I read it and it has lacunas. Somehow, it is the worst. Very contradicting here. I will leave it at that. I'll give parting shots. I'll start from Job, the Honorable Sarah, Honorable Mafabi, Chairman Mao, and finally, the Honorable Dr. Chris Baryomunsi.
My parting shot is an appeal to the members of the 11th Parliament. This bill has direct consequences for them. Because as we speak, I think the attrition rate this time around was about 80%.
No, 58%.
58%. Okay. But majority of them are going to go into the private world. Either into, many of them actually are associated with NGOs. They are going to go out of this country for further studies or even for employment. They are going to be
Kadama.
Some of, no, not as Kadamas. A number of these MPs are accountants, professional accountants, they are lawyers. They are going to be having international partners. What does that mean? That when this law is passed, they will actually have to register as foreign agents.
Thank you. The Honorable Sarah Pendi.
I just want to encourage all Ugandans who can read to actually read this bill, because some statements are made without clearly reading and understanding what is actually in the law. And when you read, actually, there are those obligations that government is actually supposed to undertake. And it clearly, for example, in Section 6, refers to Schedule 6, the 6th schedule of the Constitution. And these are responsibilities of government. So we must know what government is supposed to be doing. And if you are an NGO or a foreign agent, those are things that you must not engage in.
Okay.
And they are listed. They are over 20, I think 27 or something like that. So let us read and please Parliament has opened space for you. Go and present your views there.
Thank
My
you.
brother here, please prepare to go and make your submissions so that you don't only speak here on UBC and end here. Take those views before the committee so that the committee can clearly look at them and also look at the regulatory impact assessment, as I said.
Thank you. Honorable Nandala.
You know, there was a law which was brought during Obate's government. Detention without what?
It's called Public Safety Act.
Now, there were MPs there, Barakaria, I think, who, they said this law should have passed long ago. So the day the law was passed, a few days, they were the ones who were culprits and were taken to Karamoja. They regretted why they had passed such a law. So I want to tell colleagues, this law is not good. Why? What is it trying to cure, which it has not cured in 40 years? We already have laws around which deal with everything which is in that law. But there's something hidden which they are trying to come in. And that's about politics. Which politics? For me, politics is now part of, if you're a democratic country, allow democracy practice. I am happy everybody is talking about Article 28, which is saying freedoms of association, freedom of speech, and what. So why are you coming with this? I want to plead that this law to the government has come at it is a long timing, first of all. If you need it to come in, you need to do the whole, maybe publish, the whole, go to the whole countryside, educate Ugandans about the law. It doesn't need to know every time there's a parliament. I want to stay every time there's a what? A parliament. Nobody Mao went to court and they ruled that about DP. They said every time there's office what? Bearers. It should not hurry with the 11th parliament. There's 12th what? Parliament. There will be a 20th parliament. If need be, they will be the ones to come and deal with the law. Don't hurry. Why? Why are you banning? What do you want to achieve? So for me, I want to propose this law is very bad economically. It will affect you. We can talk about the economics. I'm happy my younger brother talked about it. Money, now they will crowd the government, create crowding. You will have no money for investment. You will have no jobs. I can tell you, even you, Sarah Opendu, as you are talking, this law will affect you. I'm aware you're also among the 58% going away. If you're not
going away.
You're going away. This court here is taking the rule in your favor. So be careful about it. My brother Chris Bariomosi, I want to ask you that you better, I will try to look for figure for you about the budget and what has been done. I would ask you to go and look through it.
Thank you.
By the time you give me a call that my brother, you read. Now, Chris, let me, on conclusion on this, me, I know Chris very well. We have known each other. The Chris we used to know is not the Chris we're seeing here. But I can tell you, when you were going out, Chris, one day you will call me that what you said was right.
Honorable Nandala, you've answered the question that Honorable Mao, you failed to make an argument, you're now naming the man. Over to you, Honorable Mao.
It's always like that. If you cannot attack the problem.
Hey, he's attacking the person now.
First, as the Speaker of the 12th Parliament, I'll be a fair referee.
That's good.
Secondly, there are questions of efficiency and bureaucracy. As an advocate, I have to get a practicing certificate every year. That has never stopped people from believing that I can represent them. Every business in Uganda, in the cities and town councils, they have to get licenses every year. So what we need to talk about is also efficiency. At the Ministry of Justice, we just launched our client charter. The Ministry of Internal Affairs has made some improvements in areas like passports. They are a lot efficient. In every country in the world, particularly in America, lobbyists, which is really another name for representatives of foreign interests. Even we in Uganda, we hire lobbyists. For instance, if we are being attacked because of the oil pipeline by climate change activists, then we get people who go and speak to members of Congress and senators to explain our position. We don't want to be judged without a hearing. So assuming tomorrow the Honorable Nandala Mafabi, former presidential candidate, is now representing Azerbaijan in building the refinery, he will come to the Ministry of Energy when there is a bidding process and take the Honorable Nankabirwa for a cup of tea and say, my friends in Azerbaijan are the best for the refinery. But the thing is transparency.
Yes.
I think what the government is saying is, do it, but do it while we are seeing. I think that one is a fair game in relation to those we call lobbyists. We have lobbyists in Uganda, but they don't want to be registered. Lastly, my advice to the members of parliament as they debate. In the 12th parliament, I don't have a vote. I'm what you would call the MP of Kameme in the 11th parliament. Mind the gap. And that gap is the gap between what the Constitution says and what this proposed bill is proposing.
Thank you. Finally, Honorable Dr. Chris.
Well, there is a lot of scaremongering regarding this bill, which is uncalled for. It's like when we were discussing rationalization, there was a big debate on shifting UCDA, the Coffee Development Authority, taking it back to the Ministry of Agriculture. The same people were saying, no, now your coffee will dry up, will be uprooted, will be what? Now the coffee plants not there in the country. So, in my culture, my press, we have a saying that when you throw a stone in the pack of dogs, sorry to use the word dogs, the one which barks, which cries loudest, is most likely the one which has been hit by the stone. Now when you look at this debate, it is civil society and the opposition that is crying, fearing that maybe this law is intending to shrink the civic space.
Banks opposition.
No,
telecoms, you know, but you must the people in the
that is inciting them, but just hold on. So unless you are arguing that you are in the habit of bringing in that money, then maybe it can be understood from that point. Like Honorable Mawa said, this law is promote accountability. That even you, civil society, if you are getting money from outside, be transparent. You, opposition, if they are friends and supporters who are giving you support from outside, be transparent and declare. Basically. So I don't know what you are scared of. Okay. Number two, I think the assumptions being made on the effects on the economy are largely false. Like saying the foreign direct investment will collapse, the donors will not come, the partners. I would want to have an argument with Nandar maybe at another time on those issues, and we discuss the economy of Uganda, what's doing.
We shall do it.
Finally, this is a bill, like we have said. And legislation, the executive proposes, Parliament disposes. And in that process, the voices of Ugandans are listened to. Okay. And this is a heresy debate. But don't debate with the sentiments, with the lack of objectivity. We are saying whoever has interest or is affected by this law, please feel free. There is nothing wrong with even the 11th Parliament saving this bill, and then the 12th Parliament starts on it. That's not an issue. If, for instance, there are many Ugandans who still want to make a contribution, and it comes to the end of the 11th Parliament, it can be saved and then carried forward. That should not be an issue. So we object to the narrative that this bill is useless, or that the cabinet has brought it in bad faith, or that we are incompetent, we have no capacity to put up a bill which is the interest of Ugandans. Like Honorable Sarah said, for you to bring a cabinet paper, it must pass some tests. You must do a regulatory impact assessment, which is a thorough analysis of it. You must get a certificate of financial implications. And in the Ministry of Finance, there are people who are as educated as Honorable Nandara on issues of accounting and finances. So we have gone through that. So it is in the good faith.
Which financial implication which Kaisaja can write
the interest,
and bring.
The sovereignty interest of Ugandans.
Okay.
So go and take your views to the Parliament. And by the way, if a committee, for instance, brings a bill which has got alterations that amount to over 30% of the bill, that bill collapses, we have that culture in Parliament, we take it back. So members of Parliament will listen to everybody, so at the end of the day, we come up with a law which addresses the concerns and interests of all Ugandans.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank the production team for making today possible. Gentlemen and lady, thank you so much for gracing us to discuss such a patent issue. And also you who is watching, thank you very much for watching. I hope you will follow the proceedings tomorrow, especially in the committees there, as they discuss this bill. But we'll end with this quote: laws are like clothes, they should be made to fit the people they serve. Good morning.
UBC, inspiring Uganda. Notice is hereby given that the Clerk to Parliament will on the 13th, 14th and 15th of May 2026 at Parliament House administer the oath of allegiance and the oath of Member of Parliament to each person elected as Member of Parliament in accordance with the following schedule. Wednesday, 13th May 2026 from 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Honorable Ayo Joyce Makamoy to Honorable Babidia Mili Babalanda. From 2 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Honorable Babula Noel Kataike Matilda to Honorable Kanabi Jime. Thursday, 14th May 2026 from 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Honorable Kangwaje Stephen Rakanuma to Honorable Uchamuzi David Kalwanga. From 2 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Honorable Lule Eria Eric to Honorable Nambeshi John Baptist. Friday, 15th May 2026 from 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Honorable Namboze Teddy to Honorable Opolot Patrick. 2 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Honorable Opolot Okwalinga Simon Peter to Honorable Zawede Victorious. Please note that each member-elect of Parliament is requested to collect his or her invitation card, program booklet and biodata form from the Office of the Clerk on Monday, the 4th and Tuesday, the 5th of May, 2026 between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Please carry along your national ID. Filled-in biodata forms may be returned to room 112, first floor, south wing, or handed in at the registration desk on the day of swearing in. Each member-elect of Parliament is requested to follow the schedule above and advised to keep time. Each member-elect of Parliament shall be accompanied by 3 people only. Each member-elect of Parliament with disabilities shall be granted 1 additional person as an aide.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archive stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise, and
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
And we haven't managed to bring the European continent fully into the European Union, then our direct neighbors will be influenced by Russia, Turkey, or China. It will definitely be difficult for us.
Earlier, I spoke with Yücel Bulut, assistant professor at Karadeniz Technical University, and he said the EU's stance on Turkey has shifted because of an external influence.
I guess Ursula von der Leyen is confused. I don't know if she's talking about Turkey, where it was her ally until very recently during the Syrian crisis. Apart from that, her sayings and her approach toward Turkey, I don't know, it might be under influence of some other countries, because we all know that Turkey is one of the biggest partners of Europe when it comes to